What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. My name is David Castillo from Saint Vitus Bar. Welcome to the age of quarantine. I hope everyone is having a good and wonderful day today. I want to give a quick shout out to my friends over at Grimm for just making great beer. And that's what we're going to be having a drink today with a person that I don't know, but a person whose bands I really like. We're talking to Kyle from Realize, which is an industrial metal band that just came out with a fucking white shit hot record on Relapse. I really like it. And also it's from the band Sex Prisoner. Super, super good. And just really wanted to kind of reach out, talk to these guys. It's really hard to, put out music nowadays, and they've been making some stuff that I just really like. So without further ado, I saw Realize Industrial Metal in the chat. Let's go bring them up and see what is up. All right, let's see. Where are you guys? Here we go. Realize. Boom, boom, boom. Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? There we go. Connecting now. So cheers, guys. Hope everyone's good. Yo, what is
Hey,
up?
how's it going?
Good. Cheers, Kyle. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How's everything with you?
We're good, but I have to say, we owe you an apology. We're gonna start the show with an apology. We realized that one super sleuth, we posted your brother instead of yourself on the flyer for this episode. Am I right about this?
Yeah, I saw that, but it's close enough. My parents get us confused sometimes, so it's
Okay, cool.
we're
Well,
used to it.
I'm far away from your parents, but I had to bring it up, and I thought it was really fucking funny because we have our friend Drew, who's an amazing designer. Shout out to Drew Castle from Total Meltdown and Perfect World. He helps us out with all that stuff, and it was, I think, the first time in Age of Quarantine history that's happened. So we think it's hilarious, but it's really good to talk to you, Kyle. Where are you? Where are you right now? Where are you coming to us from?
Yeah, I'm at my house in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay, Arizona, huh? Cool.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, on Age of Quarantine, we just like to dive in, talk about everybody's kind of musical journeys and paths and stuff like that. Were you born and raised in Arizona? Is that where you guys are from?
Yeah, I was basically raised in Arizona. I moved here when I was really young. Pretty much all my family's originally from Southern California, but I call myself an Arizonan and, consider Tucson my home.
Got it. Cool. So when you were growing up and stuff like that, what first kind of started drawing you into music? When did you kind of realize, even when you were like really young, like as a kid, when were you kind of attracted to music and were like, that could maybe be my thing?
I like music really, really early on. I even going back to, probably, early grade school. I just remember like driving around listening to music with my dad, and he was into like rock and roll and stuff like that. So it was just just different classic rock bands with him, which I enjoyed. I didn't start getting into punk until I don't know, maybe I was like 9 or 10. I had some older cousins in Southern California who were into hardcore and punk, and they showed me some bands, and it really got my attention, and I really liked it, and just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, for sure. So Pops is into kind of like classic rock and stuff. What would you say would be a couple of his favorite bands that you would love to like sing along to, like as a kid?
I recall back then, and he really liked The Who a lot. So I remember listening to The Who all the time with him. He also liked, like kind of your traditional classic rock bands like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. But the one that sticks out to me the most, like that I remember vividly listening to him, is The Who.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it's always just interesting to me because I feel like as we kind of grow, and some of these things that were just around when we were kids were really like formative to us, even in like they weren't your choice, maybe they were just around, like you didn't know that your cousins were going to be, Southern California was obviously a hotbed for hardcore and punk rock, and then that's sitting there and hitting your ears. So when did you actually start playing and stuff? And what do you play? Let the people know.
Yeah, I play in all the bands. I play bass, but I also play guitar, and I also I started playing guitar when I was about 11 years old. Um, I started listening, with influence from my cousin, and just, I don't know, I guess paying attention to, MTV and kind of skateboard culture, I guess. It's, I like punk rock, so um, I was listening to more and more of that type of music, and I was, had an interest in playing it. So, got a really cheap guitar when I was 11, and have been playing ever since.
Nice.
Um, I think the first band that I was in, I was about 12. Just some kids I was in junior high with. I mean, we weren't good by any means, but we had like a Iron Maiden cover band, just kind of having fun in the garage.
Yeah, no, and that's great though. I mean, for me, speaking of Iron Maiden and skateboarding, I've said it on this show plenty of times that, skateboarding was a huge gateway into heavier music and just underground music in general. Whether it was the first time I listened to Iron Maiden was on Welcome to Hell, the skate video that Toy Machine put out. And
Oh yeah.
Jamie Thomas had that part to, I believe it's Hallowed Be Thy Name. And, it was one of the first times I ever listened to Iron Maiden, like, properly, So I felt like, just skateboarding has always been such a great conduit to music culture in general. What were the kind of things that the skaters that you were listening to and stuff like that, what were they kind of like, what was sort of the influence coming out there that you were like, oh man, this is my shit?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to skateboard. I was really terrible at it, but I always like the kind of the kind of the like the anti-authority culture surrounding it. Guys just doing their own thing, having fun, almost kind of the counterculture side of it. But in terms of like do you mean like in terms of the specific like music or just the genre in general?
Anything that you came across while like reading magazines or watching videos and stuff that you're like, ooh, what's that? I want to know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I had, for example, like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, like on PlayStation. I just remember, looking up bands from that. Um, back in like middle school and high school, I was into kind of a lot of the Epitaph bands. So we get like Punkorama CDs, stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And there was just such a wide array of music and all that stuff, and just kind of discovering culture and all these sort of like weird ways. Dude, video games definitely. I mean, I remember playing Road Rash, like
Yeah,
on Sega, and
yeah, I have Road Rash.
and listening to Soundgarden, being like, "Yo, Rusty Cage, what the fuck is this?"
Yeah, yeah,
Again, it's just being a kid, different sort of things, kind of pulling you into different sorts of culture, and you don't even really know it at the time, but it's all this stuff is sort of shaping you. So you were
yeah.
playing guitar and stuff like that since pretty early age, 11, 12 years old, and doing covers and stuff like that. When did you kind of start kind of realizing that there was more of an underground culture and things of that nature, DIY culture, that you would later, become more heavily involved in? What was the sort of gateway into that sort of stuff?
Yeah, the first show I went to, I was probably around 12, 13, and I really liked it. I was just drawn to, it was basically just like a bunch of kids having fun and doing their own thing, and I was kind of drawn to how independent it was, and how people were basically taking the initiative to create things on their own, create a community, kind of do something productive and express themselves and have fun. So I think the first couple shows I went to kind of solidified it for me. Like it was something that I wanted to pursue further. And just also the fact that I like music a lot, but going to my first kind of like punk shows is really what did it for me.
Yeah, for sure. What was it like when you first kind of encountered how people were behaving at a show? For me, I remember it was like, dude, I can't believe how people are dancing, reacting, and just sort of behaving to this music. To me, it was like the wildest thing on planet fucking Earth. Was there any like show or anything in particular that you were like, dude, this is fucking insane. I want to do this. I want to be like this band or like these sorts of folks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like the first couple shows I went to were more or less local shows, and nothing really crazy happened. I mean, there was some like moshing, but it wasn't like severe or like super violent.
Yeah.
My cousins that I mentioned in Southern California, they took us to a couple shows out there. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think like Cyanide Beach played one of the shows. They're kind of like a metalcore band from the early 2000s. Trying to remember who else played that show. But I just remember that I think that was like the first time I like saw like hardcore dancing in person and how violent it was. And like I remember some kid just got like kind of close to us and my one of my cousin's like girlfriend at the time, and he like stuck his leg out and like tried to kick him away, so he wouldn't hit us. And I just remember thinking that was so cool. It's just kind of self-policing, but there's nothing really to it other than that.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that moment or those moments are really like huge because they just stick in your mind. You know what I mean? Like I remember the first time I saw Vision of Disorder on Long Island, and like that's where I'm from, and they were obviously a huge band, but they were from like literally 2 towns away from me, and they were blowing up, and I was like, holy shit, who the fuck are these people? This is insane. And they're from like right here. Like this is so too, like they're not, into like Aleister Crowley and then I'm from like, Birmingham or something, like I could really understand this. Like this is really cool. So when did you start, kind of trying to play and become more part of the scene and doing stuff like that?
I think as I got more into high school, got more, serious about, actually starting to play some shows. I had several bands in high school. None of them really, amounted to a whole lot, but they're still fun. Like I had a good time. But I'd say in high school, I started getting more serious about, realizing that I could, be in a band. We could write a set. We could play shows with bands that we liked, and then we could release the music too. Like I had some bands we released some like demo tapes, and then we could even go out of town and play. So I think it was in high school where I realized that is an opportunity to pursue the hobby, I guess.
Yeah, totally, and just like go off and try and do it more. Was there, I first heard of you because of Sex Prisoner and that whole sort of band and stuff like that. But was there stuff that predated that and stuff like that? Any other bands that you kind of started, playing out with and then potentially touring with before that?
Sex Prisoner was I'd say the first band where we kind of experienced some success. I had some other bands in high school, but it was just kind of playing just local venues and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Sex Prisoner was kind of like the one where we had releases, we played out of town.
Yeah, and it became more of like an established and real thing. What was bringing that together, and how did you find the people to make that band? Because just for people out there who may not have heard, Sex Prisoner is a band that you were in before, realize it was like there's a really cool like power violence-y, hardcore-y, nasty band. I think you guys are on A389, right?
Yeah. He released our LP digitally, and then that's kind of like when he kind of slowed down his label, and then Deep Six ended up putting out that LP. But
I remember there was an affiliation with A389, and that's how actually I had heard of the band, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I like it. That's dope. So how did that come together, and how did you find the people to play this really wild power violence hardcore sort of blend out in the desert?
So I wanted to play just an extremely abrasive pissed off power violence band. Basically, I like power violence. I also like I don't know, I guess kind of like heavier like metalcore type bands. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to I I don't know, try to fuse the genres a little bit, or not fuse the genres, but I guess take influences from a bunch of different stuff that I was listening to back then, and just create something that sounded very pissed and abrasive. Um, so I approached my friend Gilbert, who plays drums in Sex Prisoner. I've known him since high school. Um, we hung out together in high school in the same friends group, and it was originally just him and I jamming. We were basically just like a bass and drum band, and we had like a couple of guitars that we were trying out, and then it didn't really pan out, so we just decided to stick with drum and bass. And then my brother, he actually got kicked off his football team in high school. So he was, I don't know, it seemed like he was pretty pissed, and I wanted to, I don't know, he's my brother, so I was like, hey, you want to sing for this band that I'm starting? We're just going to play some shows and probably try to release a demo. I think it'd be fun. So he sang for us, and we were like a three-piece like that for a couple of years. And then
were you playing guitar at the time, or no? You're playing bass, right? So it's
bass.
Almost like a reverse Pig Destroyer, no guitar,
right, right.
But a three-piece in that.
Yeah, our first 7-inch we recorded with that lineup, and I recorded guitar on the record, but we just didn't play with the guitar live, so it was just like bass and drums live.
That's wild.
And then I don't know. And then in terms of like, I guess like networking, we were just playing shows and making friends, kind of just your standard way that you do, and when you're involved in the hardcore scene.
Sure, yeah, definitely. And it's just about putting your sort of intent out into the world. And I like the sort of idea. You're like, all right, cool. I want to take from kind of various things that I'm listening to and kind of roll them up. But I think the best bands, in my opinion, usually start around trying to less find like a genre point to hang their hats on, but more like, I want to achieve a feeling, right? Like I'm going to this feeling, and then I'm going to find a way to get there, right? And I listen to a bunch of different things, and I want to be like, okay, whether it's I want to be the most low-tuned, heaviest, I want to feel like I'm dragging you into hell kind of vision, or something maybe more beautiful and post-rocky and cinematic, or something like you guys are, it's like the songs are going to be no longer than 90 seconds or 2.5 minutes or something like that, and we're just coming to cut your throat and we're out, And that was really, I feel like at the time, I feel like there are more bands now who are playing extremely fast, who are, doing a lot of stuff like that. But I felt like you guys were a little bit, you were earlier on in that wave than a lot of people now, like a Gulch or like bands like that, which are all great. But you guys were kind of starting to do that. Did you feel like you had a lot of bands to play with or kin to, or did you feel like, hey, we had to kind of really kind of carve out our own place?
No, I mean, I feel like there were, really heavy bands, and there were fast bands to play with. So I didn't necessarily feel out of place. And, Tucson's kind of like a mid-sized city. So, the scene is cool, but it's not like as big as say like New York or Chicago. So you're playing with kind of bands that span a lot of different genres, so they can tend to be diverse shows. So we weren't necessarily we would play with I'm trying to think of who we played with early on. Well, I recall back when I was in high school, me and my brother were in like just a band, is like another drum and bass band. I think he was 14, I was 16, and we played with like Mind Eraser and Scapegoat at like a house show. So like that was pretty sweet, So I feel like there was like bands like that already. Like I don't know if like we were kind of at the spearhead of all that, but we took influences kind of around that era.
Yeah, totally. I'm just saying kind of like in waves. I felt like you were sort of like in between that, shout out to Radigan and Mind Eraser, amazing band. But yeah, absolutely. I felt like what's interesting, I think, about being from a place like you are too, is like, there really is not, like you said, in bigger cities, it's like things can be a little bit more divided, right? Like there can be hardcore kids over here and punk kids over here, whatever. In smaller markets, I feel like everyone's just like are you like into like weird underground shit? Cool. Like we could all
Yeah.
just sort of we can all sort of just be together, right? So like the shows there, like you said, had to be sort of diverse by the fact of just like what exists, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, yeah, you make a lot of different friends who have, you know, maybe, you know, slightly different music tastes, and you know, you're just you're playing shows and having fun, and you know, if it's a heavy show, that'll be cool, and if there's, you know, a skate punk band or whatever playing. I remember one time we played in Flagstaff. We played. It was a really fun show. It was like Sex Prisoner and like a ska band, and it was the crowd was wild. It was fun, and everyone
Yeah.
loved it. The ska band was sweet. So
Yeah.
it's just playing shows like that can be really fun.
Yeah, dude, I saw Madball and Catch 22. You don't
Yeah.
worry about it. I've been there, you know.
Yeah.
So that's really always interesting to me because I think sometimes that leads to cross pollination of maybe like people who would normally hang out in other situations, or maybe cross, and like interesting things happen when I think that stuff sort of happens. So once you start Sex Prisoner, things are kind of going you know, pretty well and stuff like that. When did you start touring and stuff like that? What were those early experiences like actually, getting out of Arizona and seeing sort of shows and culture, in other areas through traveling with music? I always think this is really, interesting as someone who's played in a bunch of different places. I'm like, wow, I can't believe, I'm from Long Island, next to New York City, and I'm like in some weird place. I'm like, I can't even believe people like this shit here, but it's incredible. What an amazing show.
Yeah, I think probably my first impression of like my like an out of town show is just like, wow, like I can't believe like someone's actually heard of us and they give a shit to like show up, So just the fact that people were there, I thought was cool. But we haven't toured a crazy amount. Like we've done some like West Coast tours and like a few like smaller like East Coast tours. But later on, we did like a few years ago, we did like a European tour, and then we went to Japan a couple of years ago. But I'd say early on, we were kind of just sticking around like our region, like California and Arizona mainly, and I guess the East Coast. But I would say the shows more or less that we played, I would say they were fairly similar to the shows that we'd play here in Arizona. Just in terms of the level of interest and participation and how approachable everyone was, and just kind of how the shows were run. I'd say it was fun to travel and fun to like meet people, meet new people and make friends. But I wouldn't say like there was like a huge like culture shock or anything like that. Going outside of Arizona.
It's just kind of interesting, I think, sometimes to see the people who are kind of maybe like you and your friends are doing sort of similar endeavors in another place, and just seeing how maybe they do things or whatever, and you pick up new friends. And to me, that's
right.
Really like the things you kind of can't replace about obviously a lot of music and like the experiences that you have doing stuff like that. What was it like? You said you went to Japan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Because now we are talking about culture shocks in a different way, right? Like we're like, whoa, I'm on the other side of the earth playing.
Yeah, Japan was exceptional. I love Japan. Like every band we played with was really good, and the people in Japan had the shows were really fun. They were really friendly. We played with a band called Fight It Out, and they're all really cool guys. Their band's really good. We did Japan has a great like public transit system, so like you could get around really fast and efficiently. So we would take an opportunity to like sightsee as much as we could during the day. So we were just trying to jam pack as many activities as we could while we were there. So we were like sightseeing during the day and then like go to a hardcore show, at night. And the shows were awesome. It's kind of cool. It was almost like a dichotomy because I'd say a lot of like we're mainly in Tokyo area. We went down to Osaka and like Kyoto, but I'd say like the city areas are like really professional, and then like so it's kind of like straight laced and professional, and then when you go to the hardcore show, it's almost like a mirror opposite of that. It's I mean no one's like wild or anything, but it's kind of cool to see that there is like a hardcore and metal scene in like a really professional society.
Sure, definitely. And just also, I remember talking to different friends and stuff like that, and like, I remember actually reading an interview with Sick of It All back in the day when I was a kid, and they talked about going to Japan and how everybody would go like nuts, and then as soon as the song stopped, like everyone just be like very quiet and chill, and
Yeah.
they were like they couldn't kind of believe it because they were like you were all murdering each other like
Yeah.
2 minutes ago, and it would be like super quiet. They were like, holy shit, and then as soon as they started playing it, it was like boom, like
Yeah.
I always thought that it was very interesting, and I've never made it over there to play music or as a human being, but everyone that I know has been there has absolutely loved it, and it's really cool again to see the world through the lens of actually playing music is a really interesting way to just go to any particular place, right? Because you're going
Yeah, it
to
is.
plug into that music culture there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember on the point where people mosh really hard. The first show we played was in Yokohama, where our buddies Fight It Out are from, and it was like this little basement, and they moshed extremely hard, and I was impressed by how hard they moshed. And afterwards, it was all like you said, it's all just cool, hanging out, chill.
Yeah.
But that was a
Yokohama
fun show.
brings it, baby. Come to
Yeah,
Yokohama, they're gonna fucking bring it. I love that. That's so great. Yeah, and totally, and that's all, and I love that. It's like this is the kind of the tapestry of memories we all sort of have from going off and doing wild adventures while playing music, which is I think one of the main reasons to sort of get into it and do it anyway, right? It's like something
yeah,
very unquantifiable or unqualifiable that everybody kind of has when you go through. So it's really cool. So Sex Prisoner, obviously you guys have had a bunch of releases, super cool band. What's been going on with that project at the moment? Because we're going to get to Realize in a second, but how's things with that?
yeah. We've been kind of quiet this year. Like we played a few shows earlier in the year before COVID, but we haven't really been too active this year. I mean, we have some releases that we're talking about doing, but we haven't really made a whole lot of progress on them yet. But we're still kicking, but I guess not very active.
Sure, sure. So I mean, and that's also, just it's interesting. You never know when you have someone who's in multiple projects, what's kind of on the back burner, what's kind of not, what's kind of front and center and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
and we're all friends, so we've known each other for a really long time. So it's kind of like a band where it's I think we'll always be there, just unless there's some life event happens or whatever. But I don't know. We're all really good friends, so it's not like I don't see a reason for us to end. I'd say.
sure, yeah, and that's a really good point. Some people do decide to end stuff, some like very more formally or publicly. And some folks are just like, when we pick it up, we decide to pick it up. If not, it's cool. Like, we're just
Yeah.
gonna play it out in this different way. So, Sex Prisoner, that's been something that's been kind of an ongoing musical project in your life, and then kind of after that, we have Realize, which tell me how that sort of formed, and it definitely has a completely different like kind of tone and point of view and vision than Sex Prisoner. So tell me about it.
Yeah, so it started off as just like a solo project for myself. I'm really into industrial metal, kind of like the late '80s, early '90s kind of earache type sound. I thought it'd be fun to get an old school drum machine and just toy around with it, and try to write some songs and just see what I could do. So that started off as kind of just like a little fun composition project, and figured I be fun to write a demo, and that's basically what Demolition was. Is kind of like my first attempt at trying to write in that style. It's pretty obvious who I was listening to write it. Like Godflesh, Pitch Shifter, Scorn, but so originally it was just kind of like a fun way to challenge myself to like write a different style of music, and I guess learned kind of like a cool retro technology.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that there's obviously for everyone out there, like getting a drum machine, learning how to program that thing. I make electronic music myself under the name Confines, more like industrial techno, and it mostly using hardware and stuff. And it really is something to pick up and to learn. And maybe when you get inside of learning a piece of hardware machines, you really understand it as an instrument, and then learn how to compose it, then maybe see the influence that that machine had on the aesthetic of the music by getting inside that. What was it like learning how to program and stuff like that? Did you find it frustrating? Did you find it liberating? Because I feel like on the computer, you can do anything, right? But a machine gives you, especially older machines as well, give you such a set of parameters to work with.
Yeah, it is limiting, but so you have to create with, I guess what's given to you. But at the same time, I'd say there's quite a bit of variation, especially like with, like drum sounds. You can experiment with, like, they have like different, like hi-hat sounds, or, snare sounds, and you can like tune them up and down. You could even like layer sounds on top of each other. So it was kind of cool experimenting with that, trying to get like a drum kit sound that I thought sounded gnarly and kind of sterile and cold sounding. In terms of like the actual writing process, it's quite tedious, but it's almost kind of therapeutic. You're kind of you're almost like just vibing out by yourself, like trying to like write like rhythms that sound cool and that you can get into, and just kind of like dialing those into the machine is, I don't know, it's kind of just like therapeutic and almost like a fun little solo project or activity to work on.
I totally agree. There's like a meditative thing. So I love, Justin Broderick. I love him, right? He's one of my favorite musicians. I've had the pleasure of playing with J.K. Flesh before. I absolutely adore Justin in pretty much every one of his forms, from Napalm Death all the way to J.K. Flesh and everything in between, and obviously Scorn and stuff like that. And it's like a really beautiful thing. And when I'm making music too, and I'm using a lot of hardware as well, I mean, I'm just really trying to create something that I feel like I could almost listen to forever. And there's a sort of meditative way where, like, when I get into it, I'm just like, yes, this riff, this moment, this bass line, this drum part that I wrote, I could listen to this at 2 a.m. for 10 minutes, and when I get to that place, I know that I'm like in a good spot. What's like a good moment for you when you're kind of creating and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm hitting something?
Yeah, I like, so the way I would write is I'd try to get a rhythm down on the drum machine, and then I would actually like record it into like a looper pedal, and I'd try to just experiment with like riffs on top of it. And then I think what was most satisfying for me was like, so sometimes I could play have a drum machine, like the little pattern that I record onto the looper pedal, like playing for 10 minutes as like try to get a riff down. It's probably pretty maddening to listen to if you live with me. I feel bad for my wife,
my poor wife just be like, put it up,
Yeah.
So you really kind of start rhythm first, and then you're kind of like trying to kind of figure out riffs that might kind of go along once you have something that you feel is like propulsive and good.
Yeah, but I think what's most satisfying to me is like find like a rhythm that like succeeds like another rhythm that I'd already come up with. So I guess like fitting 2 rhythms together and just having them flow and I guess sound good. So I like once I guess do that, it's I don't know, I guess really satisfying.
Sure, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel kind of the same way. For me, it's just like building and getting a building to certain moments, and then at a certain point, then I'm starting to compose a little bit more. Once I start actually recording it into the computer, I have a bunch of samplers, but when I'm trying to make it a little bit more definitive and a little bit less jammy, I'm like, okay, then I'm gonna have to edit this down and kind of, all right, get to the point I can listen to it forever, but whatever. So once you created Demolition and you were pretty satisfied with the effort, and that's really cool to kind of bring something to light. How did you kind of, you brought in your brother to do vocals? You brought different people into into the project. What was like that from going from like a solo thing to kind of bringing some other folks in and kind of creating it in a bit of a broader vision?
Yeah, I wanted to play it live, so that's how I brought the Matts in. Matt Underwood plays guitar for Sex Prisoner, and then Matt Mutterpearl plays for a couple Tucson bands, North and Languish. So I originally brought them in to do like live guitar for me. We had I had booked a couple shows, so I couldn't do it all myself, so I wanted some guys up there with me, and we had a lot of fun with it, and they were fun to be in the band with, cool guys. So I wanted to, after we played a few shows, I wanted to continue writing and just seeing where I could take the project. And I figured since I had the Mats with me, I'd be able to bounce some ideas off of them. And I wouldn't just be so isolated, like, in my room, just kind of creating stuff in my own feedback loop, like I'd be able to give it to guys who'd be able to, offer a critical view of how something sounds. So yeah, I would like, originally I wanted to do just like an EP, and then I just kind of got rolling with the writing process and figured that be able to do a full LP, and that's kind of where Machine Violence came from. But I would write everything, and then I'd show it to the Mats, and then they'd have some, critiques here and there. It'd be cool if we did something like that, or, change this up a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. I think that it's something really like important to talk to people about, or just say something is like, when you're a solo artist and you're doing things of that nature, it's just hard because there's nobody, bandmates or other people, they can be maybe difficult for other reasons, or you have to deal with their opinions. But in a way, dealing with your own opinion and nobody else's can also be difficult from like a editing point of view. And so maybe getting a couple other people, other voices involved.
Yeah.
Did that help you out a little bit? Do you feel?
Oh yeah. I'd say so. And probably just like knowing that they were going to be there, like I was probably more critical of myself too, so there's that. And then they had some cool ideas, with just little kind of detail type things on, almost some, finishes of the song or whatever. But yeah, they're really helpful, having them there.
And so when you started, playing, and obviously now you're adding some live instrumentation, you're trying to keep a balance of obviously these industrial elements that you've, like worked so hard to kind of achieve to create the aesthetic and stuff like that. What was it like bringing together the live show and kind of like making those parts sort of fit? Because that's always a kind of a hard path to walk to kind of make it right. Did you find it a bit difficult, a little trial and error?
Yeah, it was difficult. It's harder to play with this band with Realize live than it is to play with Sex Prisoner. Like Sex Prisoner is kind of more like plug and play. Like nice, numero dos.
Hey, we're on the roll, man. We're on the second band, second beer.
That's right.
I have a process.
I like it. Sex Prisoner kind of plug and play, where it's just. We have our drum kit, got our amps, plug in the distortion, and just fucking go. With Realize, I play with a drum machine live, and I have a PA system that I bought for it. So like live, we just have like a PA system behind us, and the drum machine plays out of it. And it was a bit of a challenge dialing in the levels, just between the bass amp, the two guitar amps, and the PAs that the drums are coming out of. And also tweaking the kind of like the EQ on the PA to make sure that the sound coming out of it reflected what we had programmed in the drum machine. Not having it sound like too like tingy or blown out or whatever.
Which is really like a huge thing, because and it's interesting that you brought a PA as opposed to something else, because sometimes people leave that at the mercy of the club PA or depending on what you're playing, and maybe at a certain level you're not as worried about it because you're going to be playing through great PAs the entire time. These are really important decisions, because the worst thing is like, look, if you have some motherfucker back there just like hitting drums, it's like if they're good and they're hitting them right, you could play drums in a room and it'll sound like we're hitting,
Yeah.
You put a drum machine through some bunk ass shit, You're gonna sound like the weakest band on earth, right?
Yeah, and
And so
that's exactly what I was worried about because there are clubs like in Tucson that have good PA systems, but a lot of the hardcore shows or punk shows that we were playing, they don't. So you gotta be prepared to bring your own equipment and kind of have that level of control. Like I don't, like you said, I don't want to like just dial into some crappy PA thing that the mic's coming out of and just have it sound like absolute like a fart.
yeah, totally. And that's like creating your own situation. That's a great thing I think for people to, as you're making your art and stuff like that. It's like no matter where you're at, you can create your own situation, and you should invest in trying to think about those things and do so. Like know where you're at and kind of act accordingly.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So that's obviously really cool. So you play some shows, you kind of start figuring out playing live. Things are going well. How do you feel people kind of responded to this sort of like, in a way, sort of throwback industrial style? But I think that you guys do it with this sort of like, at least in my opinion, from listening to Machine Violence and stuff like that, which I really like. I think it
thanks.
doesn't sound too retro to me. Like it sounds like enough, but at the same time, there's kind of there's a modernity to it that's like enough for me to also be like, okay, this doesn't feel too, like we're being too exact about things. And overall, there's like just like a really nasty heaviness to it too, where it's like, this is not kind of in between a lot of things. This is an industrial metal band, and it's like, here it is.
Right.
So how did you feel like, oh, all right, not a lot of people have been putting guitars in industrial for a minute now. There's a lot of, synth-based sort of groups and stuff like that. There's a few. There's, my friends in Contra Collective who do an amazing job doing that stuff out from New York too. It feels like something's bubbling up. How do you feel people kind of reacted to it?
Yeah, I'd say the reaction overall has been positive. Most people recognize it for what it is. Most people are. Godflesh has been around for 30 plus years now, so they were kind of the trailblazers. So a lot of people kind of see what we're doing. I'm sure there's some like grindcore purists out there who aren't down with a drum machine up on stage, but for the most part, everyone's appreciated it and thought it was heavy and cool. The shows that we played, I think we had a couple moshers, so people were down with it.
Yeah, that's great. And did you get some kind of like younger fans being like, wow, I haven't really like listened to much stuff like this? Because I feel like active bands, obviously there's Godflesh, of course, but active younger bands and stuff like that doing this sort of thing is, I think, something that's just sort of been happening over the last couple of years, kind of bringing some of these sounds sort of back in newer projects a little bit,
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if like we necessarily turned on into the younger bands to anything.
Sure.
I think it was just kind of like a different flavor, just there's quite a bit of hardcore punk bands out there, so it's we're kind of a little bit different than what's at your typical show, and I think people were down with that and thought it was cool, as far as I could tell. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, totally. But it's just great that, to me, that you guys have sort of taken the approach, and you have, and then it's really like a actual full-on band as well, too. It's not like one person's project or something else. It's like this is a full-on industrial metal band, and you can go see it, and it kind of feels a little bit this way. So obviously, you put out the demo and stuff like that. When you started creating, Machine Violence and stuff like that, obviously this is more LP and stuff like that. When did kind of Relapse get involved and, that whole thing sort of start to happen? Because how long ago was it released? A couple weeks ago?
On the September 25th. So was that, last Friday?
Yeah, great record. I had it a little bit prior, and it was awesome to listen to. And, Enrique, shout out to Enrique, give it to me. It's like, yo, you think you would really like this? And he was totally spot on about that as far as my tastes are concerned. But when did they start to get involved, and how did that sort of relationship form?
Yeah, Enrique's a good guy. We had like recorded the entire album, and we recorded it like before my son was born in 2019. So it was done, and then there were some things I wanted to like tweak with it, just like some vocal things that I um, wasn't happy with. And then so it wasn't until like maybe like 5 months later, like after we had it like done, I went back to the studio and fixed a few things with the vocals and had my brother add a few things to it. And then we got it mastered by Audio Siege, and had basically had a like a final product, like a done album. And we were shopping around, and Relapse, we sent to Relapse, and they were stoked on it. So we just went from there.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful thing. That it's just like you had the concept, and everything sort of just kind of fell naturally for there. And again, I think it's something that just this sort of sound and vibe, it's piquing people's interest, and there seems to be something bubbling, within the heavy music scene that's bringing that sort of together. And I think there's some good bands that if I as a person who booked a lot of fucking shows, put something together for you guys, if I could imagine a couple of ways it could go, and that would be really, really cool. So as someone who is releasing a record in not so friendly, I guess, time for musicians with COVID and everything like that, how has that sort of felt for you? Being able to finally get it out, get your vision out there. How has that sort of have felt for you, and what are the challenges or not challenges of trying to do it?
Yeah, it has been a little awkward. I've been itching to, especially with the new record coming out, I've been itching to, do a release show and go on a little trip, play a string of shows somewhere, and just kind of, get the music out there, play in front of people. So it has kind of been awkward to not like support the release by playing live. But other than that, I'd say, Relapse is an awesome label, and they're really supportive. So they've made it less challenging, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And just, it's nice to, I think, maybe also get it out just even for yourself, right? Just to kind of like, as an artist, like be like, okay, I've had this thing sitting in my head for so long, and now I'm going to finally just get it out into the world, birth it out, and now maybe you have room for new thoughts and visions and creative sort of output. Has that felt that way a little bit for you?
Yeah, it definitely felt great to finally get it out there. It's like, sometimes it can take a while to release a record, so it's almost like by the time it's out, it's almost like old to you,
Yeah.
So not quite Machine Violence, but it's like, it's been done for a little while, but it definitely felt great to have it out and to have the vinyl in hand, and just see the physical copy, and just see it circulating online. My wife did the painting on the front cover, so she was happy to have the vinyl in hand and kind of see that medium.
Yeah, that was actually something that I wanted to ask you about, and now I was about to, because obviously aesthetic is like the visual aesthetic to any band is very just super important, and it feels like, oh, okay, like the point of view here too with the painting and stuff like that. I'm like, this is cool. It's not, again, it feels like it has like its own voice a little bit more than just going, okay, we're this old school industrial metal thing, and like we kind of are here. Again, that's like another wrinkle that I could really like. So how did you get obviously it's your wife, so it's kind of is that one of the first projects that you've ever worked with her, as far as artwork is concerned? How did that kind of come together?
Yeah, it is. She's she's kind of joked in the past. She said, just like, let me, do a painting for you, or how, you should use my art for something. And I remember just kind of like scrolling through different painters, like just artwork online that other metal bands use for art. And my wife's a really good painter. She's a skilled artist. So I was looking at the other artist stuff online. I was like, I'm married to a great artist. I could do something with her. So we the painting that she did, it wasn't explicitly for Realize, but it was something that she had done previously. So ended up just kind of using it and just went from there.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think sometimes, I don't know, at least, for me, sometimes when you look at certain people's work or you just have a moment with something, it could also just kind of even shape the music a little bit too, or like, oh, okay, that's the mood, that's the feeling I
Yeah.
want to create, with Realize. Like this is like the feeling I'm kind of going after, and obviously the artwork needs to be in lockstep with trying to create that environment for not only obviously yourself, but for the listeners and everybody at home. With Realize, obviously it's a heavy band. It's not some sort of like really sort of different angle, but I feel like there's a lot more atmosphere and kind of vibe to the band than Sex Prisoner, which is very stripped down, super fast, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's its own aesthetic to be that way, right?
Yeah.
With Realize, obviously, you said that you were inspired by these early earache bands. So was there any sort of feeling or particular thing that you really wanted to come across with Machine Violence, like as a release? Like, this is where I'm trying to communicate.
In terms of the music itself, I wanted to write something with interesting rhythms, but also do something that sounded heavy and abrasive. I guess kind of along the same lines of my goals with Sex Prisoner, but not as many fast parts, but kind of yeah. So have kind of like an abrasive sound, like you said, a little bit moody, with some of the almost kind of like dead air parts or some of the more like drony parts in the songs, to kind of contrast with how harsh the drum machine sounds and how harsh I guess the vocals and the rest of the music sound. In terms of the lyrics and stuff, that's all pretty much just like based off of I don't know, different concepts I've come across in science fiction books. I'm a pretty avid science fiction reader, so and I just contemplating those ideas and some of the uncomfortable ideas you can come across in those books. I thought it was kind of an appropriate theme to incorporate with a really harsh and bleak style of music.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of this stuff seems like it kind of maybe tips on a little bit of singularity stuff. It tips on like
Yeah.
a couple of different things like that, which can be extremely uncomfortable. I mean, and have been, talked about in different arenas. But like, it definitely gave me, from the title of the record to the names of the songs to some of the lyrics I can make out on a couple of listens, and also, like you said, some of the more, there's a dynamic range there too. There's some pregnant pauses. There's some, just kind of moments that kind of don't have a lot, but leave you a feeling of like, I have to contemplate what either just happened or what's about to come, which I think are really great. I think that some of those are actually, obviously, I like the walloping moments, but some of those are some of my favorite things about the record are the moments of restraint. What was it like writing those moments of restraint when you're used to being like, and I'm, the whole time?
So I think my instinct when writing is to just like try to be as aggressive as possible. And when you kind of like stand back and just listen to something that's incredibly like aggressive, you're like, it's too much. Like, I don't know that like a listener's going to, they're probably going to get like exhausted listening to this. Yeah. And I am getting exhausted listening to it. It's too aggressive. So it'd be more interesting and sound cool if, we kind of mixed it up with some parts where we kind of let up a little bit on the kind of just like the the extreme driving riffs and drums, and kind of had some pauses or had some slower parts with the drums not sounding like a machine gun or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that sometimes you can, maybe if you do certain things too often, you kind of normalize that sound for the listener, and it doesn't really feel that extreme anymore, or that anymore, like, because it's all in the same palette, it's like, if you put everything in like grayscale, like it'll feel that way, or everything's just red but different shades of red, you're just like, in one part of,
Yeah.
the color spectrum.
No, that's exactly right.
And I feel like that's what you achieve that in like a nice way here without, just it's super heavy, but without kind of going overboard or, just
Yeah.
that was like, oh, okay, cool. There's dynamics to this record.
Yeah, if everything's heavy or if everything's extreme, then nothing is extreme. So,
Yeah,
you gotta build some dynamics into it and kind of, have some parts contrast each other and make it interesting.
absolutely. Well, Kyle, we only got like a minute or two left, so I just want to take a moment to thank you for coming on our little program here at Age of Quarantine. Love to have you guys, play at Saint Vitus whenever we can get back to doing the things that we do. For everybody watching, listening, go and check out Realize. The record is super dope. And if you like industrial metal, like listen to these guys. They're doing something really cool. Is there anything that you want to say? A couple last parting things? Anything to check out?
No, just thanks for having me. Hope we get to meet in person someday. It'd be fun to play at Saint Vitus Bar. I've heard a lot of fun things about it. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Cool. Awesome, man. We'll be here for you, all right? Have a great night. Take care, man.
Yeah, have a good night, man. Thanks.
Bruce.